Numbers don't care if you believe them or not. They work behind the scenes, whether you be a witness to them or not. You do a numerology every day, every time you look at a clock. The people that are what we call the novice, even the criminals see 1111. If you're a novice in it, and you're seeing it too many times or 3 or more times, then there's something that is alerting you, because now it's time for you to wake up, because numbers are shown and signs are given for you to awaken. There's always a cycle and a pattern that is shown throughout history for the last millions of years. 11 is the spiritual number of the unseen and the seen, and learning to bring the equilibrium of two of them together. We are walking math.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks.
King Simon is here. It's the first time he's been on the show, Journeyers, but you know what? I have a feeling some of you know who this gentleman is before me. The very first time on our show, brother King Simon. How are you? So glad to have you finally.
I'm wonderful, and thank you very much to be in front of your audience, and you also, and of course, thanks to Billy for even, I seen him, and then I seen you, and then I know what it was, and I started listening, so I really big up to Billy Carson and the new newlyweds, Billy and Elizabeth, so congratulations to them.
Absolutely. Shout out Billy and Elizabeth, that's great. Okay, well, you beat me to the punch. I was going to mention how we kind of came together, but indeed it was Mr. Billy Carson. When we did Mr. Numerator, that's his name, the Numerator.
The Numerovator.
Don't forget. Let me get this straight. The Numerovator, which we're going to have you talk about.
Oh, yeah, sure.
However, I just want to give the audience a little intro. So Billy and I were doing a show. You've probably seen it on Angel Numbers, what they are. And you know, Billy goes deep. And your name came up, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times. And I said, okay, that's it. It's time to have Brother King Simon on. So here he is. So guess what we're going to be talking about today, Journeyers? You guessed it. Numbers. We're going to touch on every single aspect we can. Listen, Brother King Simon, I have to start with this question. How on God's green earth did you become so passionate about numbers?
Oh, man. Wow. We're going back into the 80s now with that, because and even before that, because my grandmother, born June the 22nd, was very adamant about birthdays and sending birthdays, not only to her ex-husband, but other families and all that. Her ex-husband was born December 22nd. She born June 22nd, go send it to Jamaica. And she had, you know, if people of a certain age know that they used to have these big boxes of cards.
Yes.
Just sending out, and she remembered everybody's birthday. May she rest in peace. And I just realized as a young child that, birthdays are very important. Of course, my birthday was happening. My sister's birthday was happening. Everybody was celebrating each other's birthday. So I'm like, I always recognized that it was very important. It's not until moving forward, I was 14, going on 15, where I joined the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth in New York City. And going through junior high school, going into high school. And that's where the lessons of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad through Clarence 13X, who they called him Father of Law, who was born, Clarence was born 2/22, February 22nd, which is another massive number, keep on popping up on me again. And then from there, I left from that community at the age of 16, and I joined the Ansarul Law Tents of Kedar under Dr. York, who was called Imam Isa at that time. And he was teaching us from the Islamic perspective, because I didn't know nothing about Nuwapian yet. It was all Ansar Muslim. And he taught us Abjad, from breaking down the number 19 and what 19 means out of the Holy Quran and all these different sequences. So I learned that from him. Then I left that community in 88. And then I went towards the Nation of Islam. But before I went towards the Nation of Islam, I went back to New York after leaving that community, from Bushwick to Cleveland, back to Philly, and then back home to New York after I left the community in 88, going into 89. And on my birthday, February 1st, I believe it was a Wednesday, 1989, I called in on a radio show where Imhotep Gary Bird and Lloyd Strayhorn was on. Yes. And I called my teacher, Lloyd, one of my teachers now, Lloyd. He was written, and I called in and I got through, and it was my birthday, and Lloyd read me my name and my birthday like a book. And that was the name of the topic, reading your name like a book. And his book is Numbers in You and everything. And he loved what I do because I took it to a whole various level now from my perspective. And then I went into the Nation of Islam, going back to the mathematics, like the 5% taught the mathematics and all that kind of stuff, which came from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that's what, but Lloyd was the one after that, when I realized the connection between name and birthday, and not just the mathematics of 5% or the 19 being connected to the Quran or the book of Numbers in the Bible. That's where the catalyst was taken when Lloyd did that to me. And my first book wasn't even his book of numerology. My first book was a book by Helen Hitchcock. I still have this old book right here on the shelf. Helen Hitchcock, who wrote a book on numerology back in the day. And then I got Lloyd's book. But being that he was a melanated brother and I was only hearing about numbers from melanated people through the 5% and the Ansar and all that. And then when I started buying books, I started seeing only European or people from India. But when it seen it was Brother Lloyd, him being on Oprah one time when she first started, he's being friends with, I know personally, Ian Levanzant and Queen of Four, they're his contemporaries. I just started saying, you know what, I can do that. And then I just kept on going from there. And then Lloyd actually loved my first book that I put out was called Numbers Are Simple, People Are Complicated. And he said he wished he had that title because throughout all of his years, over 40 years of doing this, that's what it really is. Numbers are simple, people are complicated.
Numbers are simple, people are complicated.
That's the name of my book, my first book in numerology called Numbers Are Simple, People Are Complicated.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Numbers are let's use that as a springboard. Thank you for that, by the way. That is quite the history, I would say. It seems like, King Simon, you just had an affinity. This is something that you've been magnetized to. You probably came out of the womb with getting ready to have a love affair with numbers before you even consciously realize it. That's what I would say. I think some people do, actually. I think I'm one of those people. But let me ask you this. Were you good in math in school?
I was very good in math through, well, not to the point of mathematician, but I was passing my exams, but I got bored. And I was passing history. I love science. I love mathematics. And I even love history, but I got bored and I started hanging out with friends. I got kicked out of high school 3 times to go take GED because I started smoking weed and doing the foolishness and left that school, started dumbing myself down, which I was really enlightening myself in another sense, because I learned more when I got kicked out of school. Thus, I have all these books and I have a whole library. I learned more and I studied more because I remembered what the messengers teachers taught, what the 5% teachers taught, and what even the Ansar teachers taught. Because after I left high school and got kicked out, got into a little trouble, but I never went to no prison or anything. I just got into trouble. And then I just realized, and I said to my cousin, at that time, I was like 15, 16 years of age and going through my high school madness and all that and hanging out with bad friends or who I deemed bad at that time. I said to myself, to my cousin in Canada, who was a disco diva named Susie Q back in the day on my mother's side. And I said to her around my mother's table at the house in Brooklyn, New York, I said, if I don't get out of this neighborhood, either I'm going to jail or I'm going to get killed. That's what I said. And that's when my move into those Muslim communities, to the Ansar and then to the nation and all that stuff, that's when I have, because I was still I was from a family from the Jamaican, Cuban, Afro-Jamaican, Cuban. So I was exposed to a lot of conscious music through Bob Marley, Bernard Spear, and all the greats. So I was there. My father was opened a nightclub the year I was born, and he was playing all those type of music from the time I was a child. So I also became a promoter just like him, like my cousin and all that. So it's in my blood to promote. But definitely the numbers were a very important part of my next move and how I had to move in relation to who I am today, to be my very best at it and in bringing my experiences.
Let's get into that.
Yes.
You're on to something. I found, well, you are. And I say this very seriously to the audience and to you, King Simon, because we as a collective, as a humanity in the stage of history that we are in, we are being, I feel instinctively, invited by the numbers to engage with them on a whole other level. I don't have to say to you guys, I'm looking at the audience, this bombardment of number patterns, repeating numbers, dare I say 1111, but much more than that. And I want to dig into that. I want your perspective. Let's talk about now. Let's just get right down to it, y'all. Let's talk about what's going on right now. What's been going on, frankly, for maybe even a couple of decades, but it's certainly reaching, I would say, a crescendo, having to do with numbers being so integral in our lives. Can
Right.
you give us a summary of, just from your perspective, why you think now and what this all means?
Well, what's happening now is that we are just a little bit more aware of it in the Western Hemisphere. They've always been aware of it in the Eastern Hemisphere. Thus, you have Vedic numerology. You have, remember where Pythagorean came from, and Pythagorean is, according to the West, one of their fathers, founding fathers of the understanding of the vibration and symbolism of numbers. But yet, in the story of Manly Hall, P. Manly Hall, and all of them, they said that Pythagoras went and studied amongst the elders and the people of antiquity, which happens to be from either Kemet, which is called Egypt today, or people from India and all these different places. So he went to the melanated people because he didn't find it where he was at. That's why most of them left and studied, and they became the father of medicine, the father of this and the father of that. Let's be real. They knew that there was no real knowledge in Greece, but they developed by taking from other people. And I don't disrespect them because they added on to help their own people. Mm-hmm. It's just like studying Dianetics when I was younger and realizing that Ron L. Hubbard was talking about ancient people having the same wisdom. So he took what he took for his people also. So the numbers that we're seeing now, remember, the number sequences was popularized towards the late 80s, 90s, started going into the 2000s a little bit more. But you remember, there was Aleister Crowley, there was Blavatsky, but remember, their teacher was an African-American named Pascal Beverly Randolph, which I have his biography right here, to the point that they was trying to get him, and so to speak. And, legend has it that they set him up to either kill himself or something like that. That's the legend. There's a lot of debates amongst what happened. But that brother, born October the 8th, was a metaphysics and sex magic teacher from the Rosicrucian science. I even use Rosicrucian numerology also in patterns and cycles because I believe in people studying everything. And because these numbers are starting to be seen, these books are older. Most of the books I have are older than what y'all are recognizing today. I have books since 1908 to 1907 right here in my library, because I just bought a book from a daughter of a numerologist who supposedly, there's a debate with that, she finding the word, or the founder of the word, numerology.
We talked about that recently. I heard.
Yes, I spoke because I've been saying a man's name, but I only find very little about the man. He didn't even write a book, but the one that sounds similar to the same name, she wrote the book, and then her daughter took it, and she was studying under the same person they said he studied. So I think back in those days, they probably didn't want the woman to be the head or the
it was a patriarchal culture.
Yeah, patriarchal culture, especially with Europeans. You know what I'm saying? When in ancient times, we didn't live patriarchal or matriarchal. We understood the balance of it, where our
egalitarian.
Women, yes,
egalitarian. Yeah,
our women understood that women ruled the spiritual aspect and the men ruled the physical, but they always consulted each other.
Absolutely.
That's why the movie 300 was so important. But still, Leonidas got a little ignorant. He was told not to get into war, and he still did it out of his ego, his negative ego. Because that when he climbed up that mountain on 300, he went to consult the oracles, telling you what we did. You know what I'm saying? So it's so important that we recognize the deep connection between us and the numbers, because we all say, Alexis, that numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Every physicist, every scientist that I've studied, even put in my book, Numerovation for Mental Stability with Newton and Isaac Newton and Galileo, and breaking down all the way. I'm watching even Neil deGrasse Tyson speak on it too. All of them said that the universe is a grand book, a mathematical book. We're on Earth in the universe, and we're not part of this grand book. Something's not right.
Absolutely.
Something has messed us up. Some of us have pulled us away from who we are so we can be accountable for who we are, instead of believing in Jesus and Muhammad, and I have nothing against them. But every time I go to their names, I see master numbers. So that means somebody in the lexicon dictionary of religion know why they named those people those names in the English language. I'm like, wait a minute. What?
Wow.
Don't play with me. play with me.
I told you this is going to be real, right? This is
Yeah.
real. This is the down low. Okay. Okay. So let's stick with this notion now, King
Hmm.
Simon, that people are being bombarded. Now, I hear what you're saying, that it's become popularized.
Right.
Becoming popularized, but I want to dig a little bit more into the metaphysics of this. And when I
Okay.
say that, I'm talking about people who are not looking to develop a relationship with the
That's right.
numbers, but it's happening. There's
Yes.
something metaphysical going on. I'll give you an example. I have a dear friend, sister. I'll just say her first name is Sonia, and I love her dearly.
Hey,
And
son.
she had no context whatsoever, no idea that this was happening to a lot of people. But one day she called me up and she said, we were talking about something else, but she said, Alexis, I got to say something to you. Why is it that every time I look at the clock, I'm seeing 11:11? That she knew nothing about this conversation, nothing about this trend, whatever.
Right.
I'm talking about those people, the unwitting public that are all of a
Right.
sudden
Right.
being hit with this. What's happening from that perspective? What's going on in the invisible world?
Well,
And why now?
I tell my clients all the time, numbers don't care if you believe them or not. They work behind the scenes, whether you be a witness to them or not. You do a numerology every day. Every time you look at a clock, every time you look at analytics, anything that deals with numbers, because numerology just means the study of numbers. It's just Europeans and their madness that say, not people that understand this, but negative new Europeans that decided that, let's split everything up and make sure everything up. But the people that are what we call the novice, even the criminals see 11:11, 20:20. And sometimes you got to look at if you're a novice in it, and you're seeing it too many times or 3 or more times, then there's something that is alerting you, because now it's time for you to wake up, because numbers are shown and signs are given for you to awaken at a certain time. Cycles are shown, just like when winter is coming in and when fall is in, and there's always a cycle and a pattern that is shown throughout history for the last millions of years.
Sure.
Earth
I believe
story
that.
also. So people like your friend has to realize that if it's showing up, then there's something that's alerting her to be more spiritual, because 11 is the spiritual number of the unseen and the seen, and learning to bring the equilibrium of two of them together. So she has to be balanced with her physical and spiritual, because we don't know a person is spiritual unless the physical is showing that you're spiritual. And we don't know a person is physical unless the spirit works through you. Spirit is just energy. Let's not get all confused. These are different words. They change. In the religious word, is spiritual. In the scientific word, it's energy. Okay, let's deal with both those sides, and let's bring. That's why Nikola Tesla, born July 10th, was so important, because he was the maverick scientist that showed you that you better know how to blend the physical with the spiritual, so you can get a more deeper understanding and
Absolutely.
understanding. So I
love
love
it.
what he was doing as far as his studies.
Well, we can talk about his obsession and affair with 369.
369, exactly.
What's your understanding of where that came from for him?
Well, from a numerology perspective, remember, he's coming from a mathematical, but yet understood the spiritual nuances of it. But when I look at it as a numbers, if I'm constantly seeing 369, then 3 represents to me the need to expand. 6 represents to me the need to find balance. And 9 represents to me that I need to think on a higher level and always finish what I start, if I'm constantly seeing it. For me, because now you're doing with interpretations that go into antiquity with our ancestors. Some people don't even, and there's certain debates that don't even know where the numbers come up. But it's like Kaba Kamene says from Hidden Colors. He said, sometimes you could go in a dark room and you don't even see the furniture. It's not until you turn on the light. It was already there.
It was already there.
Right? It was already there, because mathematics was already here. Numbers was already in existence, because we are walking math. 5, 10 fingers, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 32 teeth. If some people lose their teeth, of course, 2 legs, all like 10 toes down. We are walking math. We understood patterns, cycles, and sequences. I mean, I showed a book the other day, and I like to show books. That's what Bobby Hemmett.
I know you do. We're going to ask you for a book list.
This one here is called The Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, a Mathematical Architect of Nature, Art, and Science, written by a mathematician. And of course, I got Robert Edward Grant's book, Philomath, and him and Dr. Talal, who are also mathematicians and some of the highest known mathematicians in the world today. So I got no problems going to the math, going to the science, I got a book called, I'll show you a book written by Abrams Publication. and it's called Numbers Universal Language. Small book, but it's full of packed with information going to the Paleolithic man back in over 30,000 years ago. They're going into all of that. But I know it even goes further than that when it comes to the mathematics. Even asking the word, they said in one of the books, can animals count? Can animals count? Think about this. This is now we're going back into patterns, cycles, and sequences where the instinctive animal can be aware that they don't even one of their cubs are missing. Mm-hmm. So they do know how many of what's going on. They are instinctively connected to them, but then they'll look around and go frantic, like, "Yo, what happened?" They know there was lions around, tigers and bears. Oh my! They know they was around. But they know they start getting friends. So there is an instinctive.
I was going to say instinctive. Yeah.
It's very instinctive. That and those deals with patterns, cycles, and sequences that we've been paying attention through. That's why we got processions. That's why we count the ages. That's why I don't call none of this new age. In the back of my book, Numerovation, I call it ancient ages.
Absolutely. Well, I want to ask you about these books. You just flashed a lot of books, and that was one of the questions, suggested reading list. I think we just saw a bunch. Are the books, most of the books that you just showed us, are they still available, King Simon?
Man, those two books definitely, of course, Robert E. Grant's, anything by Robert E. Grant, because I got to meet him at Billy Carson's house. Excellent brother. He said to me, isn't numerology a beautiful science? But any book, and back of my books, I have a bibliography or recommended reading all the time. In the back of all of my books. So
we'll make sure to have a list, because I think people are wanting to get a little bit more insight as to what's going on. Well, again, getting back to, let's say let's say that you are seeing a number. It can be, I'll give you an example. I see 32 all the time. Now, the house that I used to live in was, the number was 32. Right. I'm still seeing it. And I have some thoughts about where it might be coming from, but as an example, what might someone do? Not just me, but anyone that is seeing a number. It may be a repeating number. It may just be a number that's distinct. How might one proactively try to understand what that signifies? How would we go about that?
Now, what's so interesting, I want to show a book again, right?
I know.
This book is called Synchronicity Numbers by Anne Marie Uber. Okay. Synchronicity Numbers, another good book. And of course, the person that left numerology and went back into her Christian ways, which I respect, is Doreen Virtue. Angel Numbers 101.
She did leave. Yeah, she did
leave back. But it doesn't negate what she was channeling at that time. Whatever she was challenged, for her to be on great stations and all these Good Morning America, something spiritual was being channeled. And that's what we have to recognize at that moment of time. Because people that go back into Christianity, I always tell them, you better read that book of Numbers. Stop playing with that book of Numbers, but getting back to your point, as far as when people see those things on a numerous basis, not just because you got your phone and it says 4446. That's like get a little crazy here. Stay focused. If you start seeing it, I do suggest that people Google it up first, but always remember there's duality in every number. So if you're not striving to rise to your highest, then you're either going to your lowest or you're complacent. That's why in my book, Numerovation for Mental Stability, I state that there's 4 paths: constructive, obstructive, destructive, and complacent. So you got to be very mindful of, when you start seeing these numbers, which path are you on at that particular time? Because complacent means you're only comfortable. And you could be comfortable. It's all right. Some people want to live a mediocre life, if that's what you're supposed to do. But remember, this universe is always in motion. I don't care what you throw on the floor. I don't care what you do. It's always energy in motion. Always. So when you start seeing numbers, family, Google it up for yourself and break it down, but be able to relate it to yourself. Because by the time you come to me, I'm going to find it all in your names and your birthdays and all that kind of stuff. It's just like you being born May 28th, correct?
Correct.
Now, 5 plus 28 equals 33. So I know that your alignment number is a master number 33. So you're aligned to do things that will do healing and being jovial and keeping people on a happy mode and wanting to heal. And you may have tracked people that need help in healing a lot. Because that's what master numbers do to your track. That's why I always tell people, with great power comes great responsibility. So you got to be, that's why the number 33 is called the Christ anointed energy. We already know what happened to Christ when he realized who he was, but he also told you who you are possibly can become if you accept certain things, even if it's just a mustard seed worth of it. You got to know who you are, because
Absolutely.
I know that every prophet in the Bible is a prophet to every one of us, because each one of us have the ability to strive to be at their highest and wisest level, just like that man or woman that walked throughout the scriptures, whether it's Ruth, whether it's Esther, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Muhammad, but we keep on putting it on them and forgot that they was telling you to put it on you.
Exactly.
People forget. And so these numbers that are showing always be, it's just a reminder, not a controller. It's here to remind you, because like I say to my clients, numbers ain't here to control you. It's here to guide you like a GPS. Some of us know our way home and still use a GPS.
That's true.
Think about
Creatures
that.
of habit. Absolutely.
They punch on the GPS. Sherry, tell me where to go. Okay, if there's an imp blast, an electromagnetic blast, will you not know how to get home after that?
Exactly.
Now that Sherry's been shut down, we used to follow the stars and the moons and the Orion's belt and all these, the North Star. We know when we was going north. Now we have to depend on some apparatus when we knew how to innately just look to the stars or measure it with our hands and look to the hands and show our connection. Something is wrong now. We lost our way.
We've lost our way.
Most of us, and I say most of us, 85% of us have lost our way.
We can get into the controversial aspects of intention for the masses to lose their way.
Yes.
But I think that's all I need to say on that. I'll leave that there. But I also see in this dualistic world that we live in, a nudging, King Simon, and an urge, I say broadly, from universe to get us back to following the stars and instinctively tapping into that which we know. We don't need the GPS. We have an inner Wi-Fi, y'all, right? Exactly. I've said that before. And I think people are starting to want to do that, to want to reclaim. We use the word reclaim as if at one point we had this power. To turn it back on, to take it out of atrophy mode. So that being said, let's talk about 11 for a minute, because you talked about, y'all, you need to watch this man's live streams. He's a busy man. I think you did like 3 on Sunday, the day of rest, the 7th day of rest.
Excuse me, yes.
not this gentleman here. But you said something you said a lot of things, but one of the things that piqued my interest was you talked about the aspect of 11 that can be associated with deception.
Yes.
That's not its only aspect. But let's talk about that. And could that be connected why so many people are seeing 11 now? Are we discovering the deception of this planet?
That could be one. That's one of the reasons, because we got to remember, since we've been in the 2000s, from the time Prince says 1999, don't you want to go? No, we want to get the hell out of this. We want to go. We're going to the future. 2000, which is the 2 is the lower aspect of the 11, also represents deceiving and deception. But also remember, it represents emotional deception if you're not careful, spiritual deception if you're not careful. And because we know that this quote unquote society uses numbers to help you pay attention to them, because they need to pull you out of yourself. Because if you went back to yourself, now you'll be able to, like John Lennon said to Muhammad Ali years ago, the more real you become, the more less real this becomes. The world becomes. This is John Lennon telling Muhammad Ali. And of course, John Lennon, he got taken out. That's because he was getting more philosophical in what he did, and he had power behind it. So, and when I realized that in the 2000s, you start seeing a lot of things that's been hidden start to be revealed, the trauma and all that stuff that's going on, and men revealing their sensitivity, and the sexual realm is getting even higher. People want to be whoever they want to be. And I'm not against none of that. I understand the whole binary stuff, because in actuality, beyond the flesh, we all have the male and female in us. We just need this, that when we manifest here, we are given a function. We're shown a function. That's why we have penis and we have yoni. So I understand the function, but people want to change it up. I understand. But this is where the deception comes in, because the number 2 in the flow line aspect and the number 11 in their flow line aspect. Remember, 11 looking like, if you don't mind me going to the chalkboard. Do you mind me going to the chalkboard?
Go to the chalkboard. In fact, I'm going to put you on solo.
11 looking like a doorway, but a doorway you could either go in, and there's a doorway that you could come out. There's going in and out with this doorway. You got to understand the doorway, but it's a highway, infinite highway going what we call up and down. But in the 11 energy, it's an infinite vibration that is also showing too. That if you don't pay attention to the duality, the positive and the negative, or the high and the low, or the constructive or the destructive of it, and learn to manage the weaker side of it, which could be what we call the negative or the destructive way, and start rising to its highest, that's when it becomes something that can be harmful and deception, especially in dealing with relationship, dealing with people, dealing in business. But it also is a number of fame and fortune. It's a number of spiritual connection, spiritual alignment. So 11 on both ways can be very strong, just like any master number. When it comes to this, has this power from 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, 12. Today is 12, 12. Go figure. That's even a master number in a certain sense, if you understand how to put those, that's a sign or a symbol that we have to pay attention, because we learn through symbolism, repetition, and trauma. So if we are looking at these symbols, repetition, and trauma, and not willing to heal and get the lessons of them, then that's where it becomes a problem. And that's when it becomes detrimental to our people and all people on earth. Because I tell people, you think Al Capone didn't see master numbers? Are you serious? Do you think Louis Left Eye Louis in the criminal world, or Bumpy Johnson didn't see master numbers? Yeah, they was playing numbers. They understood numbers, and the number system was created by a Caspar Holstein, who was from out of the Caribbean, born December the 7th. 7 is the number of secrecy and revealing things. He's born the same day as Patrice O'Neill and all that. So I understood when you start seeing the numbers in its connection, you say, oh, this is where we're going with this. Oh, now you see why the numbers was created, and Caspar Holstein being one of the progenitors of it back in those days, doing the Bumpies and the Louis, the Lucky Luciano and all those people. You know what I'm saying? So I'm it's 11 is not the only most powerful one. It's a part of the power. That's why I never say that any number is greater than the other one. They are only called master numbers because of the doubling of the energy. It's only a number because it's a double one. That's why it's called a master numbers. And then the consensus through years has made it a powerful number. When some numerologists will tell you never to break it down to the 2, but if a person is born on the master number 11, like Minister Farrakhan, or like a Terrence Howard, or like a Taraji P. Henderson, if they don't understand the ability of the power of the master number, then it will naturally go to the number 2, which would be a lesser frequency, but it would be a learned frequency that you need to reach to the number 11. I'm just showing you how it works. If you look at it from a holistic perspective.
A holistic perspective.
That's so important. That's why I tell people, don't just read Pythagorean, which has been popularized by Europeans that say that he's the father of them. Go to the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans, my dear. The Chaldeans, and I think you probably seen me show this book on one of my lives. The Black Chaldeans. They was original our people. There was a community of people that understood numbers from the cuneiform, because that's what they wrote. They wasn't writing the Phoenician numbers and the Arab numbers that we're using today, but those numbers that we use today are transliteration of what cuneiform, the great, these guys got afros and beards. Look at them.
Yeah.
Stop playing with these people. Yeah. So we got to know our history and our herstory and find the unity in the history and the herstory of the numbers, because the numbers have a duality also. Is that a bomb drop? What's that?
I'm not going to tell.
Look like an alien.
It's my GPS trying to navigate me where to go in this conversation next. There you go.
I love it.
Let's talk. Oh my God. Is he rocking it or what? Now, the great thing about this is you can press pause, you can rewind, you can get the transcript. You're going to need all the information. Let's rewind. No, let's go forward.
Let's go forward.
Fast forward. Yeah. The shape of numbers. Look,
Mm.
I find numbers so intriguing. And by the way, for the record, I was not good at math, and yet, King Simon, I always had an affinity toward them that I would discover later. The shape of numbers. You've got numbers like 4 and 7
Right.
that have these hard edges, as
Right.
opposed to 6 and 9, as an
Right.
example, and 8. Let us
That's
not
right.
forget, we're about to go into the 8 year.
That's good.
Let's talk about the significance we might attribute to the shape. Now, we're obviously talking about the English language and our
Right.
uh, numerological or our number system,
Right.
but I feel like there's something to the edges and or lack thereof. Talk about that.
Well, it's in numerology, it's called the flow line perspective of numbers. What the line it flows. Let me read something to your audience about that. It comes from this book called the Beginner's Guide to Divination. Like, this is multiple different authors that came up with this book. That's why it doesn't have no one particular author. But they have a called the flow line energies. And it says in the book, it says the flow lines related to Earth and the universe. Up is upward, and the universe is, and down is downward, is in contact with the earth. The left side is the intake side, and the right side is the outflow side. Roundness is feminine, flexible, open, and a semicircle or complete as the circle, and straight lines are masculine, direct, and focused. Following this section, you'll find information on each of the flow lines and their forms, characteristics, and their genders. But you'll also find information that teaches you about their 3 types of behavior. So in my book, I talk about the flow lines and make this connection in my book, Numerovation for Mental Stability also, but I'm showing people how it also can connect to mental stability and mental instability if you're not careful in my book. Now, when you deal with numbers, and like it said, the lines represents the masculine, like the penis, like the phallic symbol, and the curves or the circles represents the feminine, just like the woman's body. We always love the curves of a woman, especially when they like Sarah Bartman and all that. They paraded her around because of her body type, of the curvature that she had, the big bold curves in the body and the booty, the butt and the breast. That's feminine. So when you deal with flow lines and understanding even in certain consensus with the numbers, the number 9 is known as a masculine number, but it has feminine flow lines, depends on how you write it. Some people write the number 9 like this. So it would have a masculine number here and then a feminine number there. Some people write the number 6 like this, straight line, but then it has morphed into a more curvy, which this is a feminine number. The number 2 is known as a feminine number, but yet it has the curves here, which is feminine, and then it has the masculine here on the bottom, where because we're in the years of the 2000s, now we're in 2023 going into 2021, but this is the dictative number right here. The feminine, the masculine the feminine is on top. So it's showing you that the feminine will be on top in this. That's why everything is geared towards the female. But on the bottom, it has the masculine. It's not pushing the man on the bottom unless you're thinking that way. But it's really that man is the support. The masculine is supposed to be supporting the feminine energy, because we've been in the 1900s with the number 1 leading, which was all masculine. All masculine. You can't doubt that the 1900s, the 1800s, the 1700s was not all masculine. Now we're in the 2000s, and then we're going to go into the 3000s, which is another masculine number, but with a feminine flow line because of the curvatures of the number 3. All feminine, depending on who and where you're writing it from. Because sometimes the number 3 in one aspect of numerology was written like this: bop, 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 bop. That was number 3 at one time. Number 2 was written like this: bop, 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 like a Z. Line here, line there. 1 was written like this: curve, bop, bop.
That's right.
So people got to realize that that's how, now, because everything has kind of morphed into more curves, and which nature always reveals curves. Straight lines are really not natural in nature. Straight lines, let me say that again, is really not natural. Even your trees that appear shapely or straight, they're curving from their root. There is a curve going on. You just don't see the curve.
That's right.
Curves are natural. The feminine energy and aspect are natural.
I'm thinking of the number 7. Remember how
Yes.
we were taught to draw the number 7?
Yes.
Can you do
Remember.
that for me? Isn't this fun, you guys?
Now
I'm
which
really
one?
enjoying.
Which 7? This one?
So,
Or
yes,
yeah,
that.
right.
Exactly.
Now, what's so interesting?
Talk about that.
Seven is known as a masculine number, but because of the water connection that it has, it's connected to a feminine aspect with the masculine strength and the line, because you're dealing with male. And when you look at the 7, and when you used to read that stuff, they used to be able to count the corners 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there was another one that added up to 7, but I knew it added up and broke it down to 7. That's why they had looked at it as a number 7. 8 was looking like this. This was 8.
Really?
At one time, this is what 8 looked like. And then it started morphing and at one time. But you got to remember, a lot of people confuse the number 8 that we call now with this.
Infinity, the sign of
Exactly,
infinity.
but this symbol is older than this symbol. This symbol, 8, is older than this symbol. You can look through all of the old ancient books. This was inspired by this.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be drawn like this. It could be elongated. It could look anywhere you want, the infinity. That symbol was just created by that particular mathematician so we can define or make the infinite possibilities of numbers understandable. That's all it was created for. So there's so many changes that the quote unquote, because of the Europeans like to learn. I got to give it to them. They'll go under the ocean and go learn. We ain't going under the ocean like that to go learn and find out. Like, my man who used to go and deal with some of the stingrays and all that, he got killed by a stingray because he loved to study the ocean. I forgot his name, Jack Caruso, one of them guys.
No, I know who you're talking about. From Australia, I believe.
Yeah, from Australia. So these guys, and I'm not against them learning, but our learning in ancient and times of antiquity was more about leaving this planet, making our spiritual connection. It wasn't about coming and staying here for too long, because we knew there was things greater than here. I just heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about all of the elements as in the universe is in us. So we should be striving from the micro to go to the big macro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We should be striving to do that, because that's why we shouldn't be afraid of death. We must understand that the so-called thing called death, where the commission's been teaching about your transformation from one life to another, that they never believed in an alpha and omega. It was Greece that connected the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, not ancient Kemetic, not ancient Sumeria, not ancient Sudan. They believe in the continuation of life.
Right.
And that's
or the cyclical nature of life.
Continue. It was no ending. I had to talk to an Egyptian Kemetic scholar about that. I called him on it. I'm going to interview him soon, Brother Reggie. And he broke it down and showed me that, they wasn't into ends and all that kind of craziness. No, we understood the continuation of things going on.
Well, it goes back to the whole premise of energy, that it cannot be neither created nor destroyed, but simply changes form. It's mind-boggling for the best of us who are intellectually understand it or resonate with it. It's still, because we're living on a planet that is predicated on duality and opposites, beginnings, middles, and ends, time. And I know that you had a statement about or comment or thought about time is not an illusion. It is
linear time is an illusion, but not time in the sense of what we're growing in and doing. Because, like I said, we're not children still. We're still moving and growing, and it carries the energy for us to be able to develop. It carries there. Now, linear time, when you start putting the 12 o'clock here, the 6 o'clock there, and we created that clock, which was necessary, but yet it is an illusion because you are creating it. We have created that, but it was our ancestors before Europe that understood that. Then they took it. That's when Julian and Gregorian and all of them took
Gregorian
it. Rogans and all of that. They understood that because it's already on the walls of the Dendera. That whole thing is on the wall of the cycles of things. They understand. That's why when you go to astrology, they got the ephemeris and everything. You got to know the connection. It shows you the ephemeris and how it is. Now, I'm into the numbers, but in order for you to find out somebody's birthday, you better know their birthday and the date, the time, and the month. So you still got to deal with numbers in some factor. But I have astrologers that come to me, yo, King Simon, why don't you do the predictive aspects of numerology? I don't want to predict. No, I got numerologists that have predicted the death of people. I want to motivate you and help you to activate your number so you can be better before you transition and move on to your next cycle. I don't want to predict your death. I got one numerologist. He predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth. He predicted the death of himself. He predicted the death of one of the dukes. He predicted all these deaths in the book. They showed me. And I'm like, I don't want to go down that morbid, because people will come to, and if they don't die at that time, but they don't realize that there is a cycle that you're going to die that will be either your challenge cycle, it will be one of your health cycles, it could be one of your transformation cycles. But I see that in every death, from Robin Williams to Don Cornelius. I've seen it in every one of the deaths that I've been studying, that I even have in my book, because I talk about the cycles they were in when they took themselves out or killed themselves. What cycles, what mental health cycle they was in. Right. I show it in the book because I need to, when it comes to these type of science, whether it's metaphysics or regular science that Michio Kaku and all of them are doing, it has to be repeatable, it has to be observable, it has to be measurable, and then it's teachable over time. That's how it works for me, because I study the sciences, and I go to the science of what they deem science first, but now they calling it quantum physics. That's metaphysics. Stop playing with us. It's the same thing.
I love it. I love it. And I tend to agree. Absolutely.
I change the words.
Woo! This is just heavy. Love the fact that you can watch it over and over and over again, because you know what? I know I will. We're talking a lot about cycles and patterns, and numbers are always going to be integral, pun intended, to all of this. Yes. But I want to talk about something else that you've touched on. It's something that I'm fascinated with, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to summarize. Guys, I'm talking to you. Have you ever had a period of time where everything is just in the flow? We could look at it as it's opposite Murphy's Law. If one thing can go wrong, everything can go wrong. But the opposite is true too. There are flows. There are cycles. I
got a book on Murphy's Law.
Of course you do. But I want to talk about that, King Simon. I want to talk about what that's all about, and most importantly, how we can foresee or recognize when we're in those. I had a colleague that called them energy windows, literal periods of time governed by I don't know what, but they do exist, and they are definitely in terms of patterns. How might we identify and then harness those periods? First, what is that? What are we talking about here? I'm not talking about the bad stuff. Let's just talk about when things are in the flow.
Right.
When things are in the flow, that's not by accident. There's a pattern. What is that pattern predicated on? And how do we harness it?
Okay, before we go there, it's so ironic that I just talked about Murphy's Law. And he's born under a master number. Murphy's Law. The guy, Edward Murphy, is born January 11th. Go figure. Yeah. Same day as Mary J. Blige, Kim Coles, master number energy, which that dealt with Murphy's Law, dealt with sometimes the negative nuances of things that might not go right in your life. You know what I'm saying? Which 11 sometimes go that route, to deceive themselves in that manner.
Right.
So when you talk about being in the flow, ebb and flow of things, that's what you're saying, right? What's that all about? Being in the ebb and flow of things. Is that correct?
I am, but I'm talking about, it seems like there's certain times that are associated with numbers, certain dates in which those windows are wide open to take advantage of, and other times everything is just stagnant. Let's say it's stagnant.
Right. Usually I call those type of cycles either your power cycles, and some can be your challenge or character building cycles.
Okay.
So,
but the question is it a universal thing, or you're referring to individual flows? I'm talking more about a universal. I don't know. We're trying to figure out where it's. Let me give you an example.
Yes, please.
So you're working on a project, and you're working on several, and Lord knows as content creators and solopreneurs are always working on something. And you may put 10 calls in, 20 calls in. These days it's texts and I don't know what texts.
Right.
You hear nothing's happening. No
Until
one is answering, and you start to get a little paranoid. We've all gone through that.
right.
And then I don't know, a week later, 2 weeks later, one personal call. You'll be on the phone with them. Then that other personal call while you're on the phone with them. Then the floodgates open, right?
Right.
This is a pattern. There's no
Yes.
question. It's like when the phone is dead. Remember when we used to work in offices? Well,
Yeah.
remember a time when we worked in offices and I was doing temp work. And
I
I
hated
remember
offices.
I remember sitting at the front desk. I was doing some temp work many years ago. I was a kid and I was a receptionist, and the phone would never ring. Never ring. But
Right.
when it rang once, all the lines lit up.
Yep.
That's something. What is that? And
That
how do we tap it? How do we know when it's coming even?
Well, I usually can help tell to people when they're in their cycles individually now. I just want to, because even every society or every, like America, one of America's supportive numbers, it was, if you studied it, you'll see that was either 4 or 13. 13 colonies, 13 states, the
Which
whole
is
13,
also.
which is the 4. But if you go to China, you find that 4 sounds like death, so they consider that a malefic number. They don't want to use 4. They don't want to be around 4. So certain states, certain places have numbers that go with the ebb and flow. But when I deal with individuals, again, my premise is to numerovate or help motivate people with their own personal numbers and how it can correlate with what they're going through and the cycles that they're going through, not shutting them down and telling them to stop, because sometimes you are in an ebb and flow. There's some things when nothing goes right, and there's times when it goes all right, because those are the cycles that you may be in as an individual at that particular time and that particular day. All of that can happen. Like I developed that so quote unquote cough on December the 1st. But then when I looked at my cycle, when I looked at my personal month cycle, I was in a number 4 personal month cycle when I did the whole mathematics to it. And that's one of the health cycles that comes up. But it's letting me know that I would probably pick it up in a weird and unusual way, because the number 4 is a number of weird and unusual, strange things happening.
Well, let me stop you there. Guess what 2020 was, y'all?
Exactly. And remember where it started, in Wuhan, China, which was a number 4 year, and they don't like the number 4. It was their challenge. Wow. They didn't like that, and it started there, according to reports. And then from the end of that year, 2021, and usually the sneak peek months of the year to come starts at the end of September, October, November, December. That's when it starts on, and that's when that thing started taking off into 2020. And that's where it started, they say, in Wuhan, China. So in China, that was 4 year coming in and showing, and then it blew up into 4 into 2020, which actually adds up to a number 40, which is a 4. You got to pay attention. I was still traveling, mind you, because that was one of my best years ever when it came to this metaphysics.
2020 was a big year for me as well.
For most of the
Billy too. Billy Carson said the same thing. That was a turning point year for him.
Turning point, because 2020 means be aware, alert, vision.
2020 vision. That's right.
2020 vision. But in numerology, 20 is the number of awakening to some new great purpose. So it's the mindset that you have to look at it also.
So listen, speaking of looking at the years, we can't let you go without discussing, and you're not one for prediction, you say, but according to the numbers, by the numbers, we're about to go into the 8 year. We're talking 2024. Mm-hmm. Give me a few words. Give me a few ideas, thoughts that you're having, even just instincts. But what do the numbers say? What is this? What's happening here?
Now you said, now think about what you said. 2024 adds up to what?
8.
Okay. From one perspective, from a holistic perspective, and I had to show this to other people, 20 plus 24 equals what?
16.
No, 20 plus 24 equals 44.
44. Oh, I see how you're doing
it. So we're going into a master number 44 before the number 8. So that is the number of paying attention to the weird and unusual that will be going on higher levels, because media, movie, and music is also ruled by the number 4. Pay attention to the positive side of it and the negative. So it's also telling you to be dedicated in your mental work and your inner work also, because of the 4. And for a person that knows what are their challenge numbers, the number 8 is one of my challenge numbers. So I'm trying to stay on the 4, because 4 is one of my power numbers.
I've been seeing 44 all the time.
44 is my power. 4 is my power number. So I don't want to look at the 8 too much. I want to go towards the 44, but it might be a challenge number to certain people, to other people. Like let's say, for instance, if I look at your number, being born on the 28, your so-called disharmony numbers are the number 6 and the number 8 also. So I wouldn't look at it as, don't claim the 8 just because it's going into a number 8. Look at that as one of the infinite disciplinary numbers, but claim the 44, because the 44 will help you to dedicate yourself more physical and spiritually to what you want to accomplish and the goals you want to get. And then it will equal the 8, which deals with money and power, but it also deals with the loss of money if you're not prepared and you're not mentally prepared, or the gain of power if you're mentally prepared and mentally focused.
I gotcha. Well, thank you for that. Wow.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. That makes perfect sense. So I know that you and Billy have talked a lot about 44.
Yes.
However, and other people have too, and I know
Yes.
y'all out there, a lot of you are seeing it. I can tell you that probably within the last 3 to 4 months, 44 has been in my face. Now I have other numbers. I have a proclivity to numbers, but 44 has definitely been almost to what you're saying, King Simon, in preparation, or maybe it was kind of a message to say, be focused more on the 44 than the 8, because I'm seeing 44 all the time.
But that makes sense, because 4 is one of your power numbers. Like I said, it's one of your power numbers. Being born on the 28, that's one of your power numbers. So anytime 4s, keep on saying that, just maintain your mental discipline, because like I said, according to MIT, it takes 16 positive to knock out 1 negative, according to their study. So if you're seeing 44, it's reminding you of what area you're going. And if you add the 5 plus the 28 plus the 2024, that adds up to 2057. So you personally next year is going into a 14-year cycle, 5-year cycle, which deals with drastic changes, but you're learning how to adapt, be versatile, keep it moving, keep it simple, be willing to expand and grow, continue with your writing, continue with what you got to move forward with as far as writing and art and whatever you got to do, spoken word, communication, because that's the cycle, and you're in the crossroads of your life for the next for last 4 years. This year is one of your crossroads, and you're going to be in it for 4 years. But crossroads means exactly what it means. Cross the road and do what you're supposed to do without second guessing yourself. That's all it means. And because 28 is a divorce number in certain systems of numerology, divorce yourself from any negative output or people that's trying to put negative inputs in you. Divorce yourself from that. It could be divorce of relationship, but it might, your relationship is going well, then you got to divorce yourself of negative people that might be trying to throw things at you, or negative situations. Divorce yourself and separate yourself, because your alignment numbers are 33, and you don't want to be Christ anointed to the point you're stuck up on somebody's cross. Be Christ anointed in the most jovial and happy and imaginative way that people can't even shock you or bother you in any way. Just laugh at it, because there's always going to be calm and storm, Alexis, regardless of what we're doing. The rain rains on good and bad people, and the sun shines on good and bad people. Stay focused.
Stay focused. I think you stay focused and stay optimistic and stay enthusiastic.
Exactly.
Listen, we're over time. You know where we're going, and you got to join us over on Patreon, you guys.
And I got a session at 3 o'clock, so we got to make sure we get this.
We're gonna continue this conversation. We're gonna go on over to Patreon. Tell us very briefly. Oh, before we do that, I got to put this in. We're gonna keep this conversation on numbers going. By the way, a little plug for next week. We're gonna be doing a live stream. We have another guest. Her name is Amy. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. I got some social. Hi, Amy. We're looking forward to having you on. We're going to be talking about the 8 year. We're going to be taking your questions. So we're going to be doing a lot when it comes to the Q&A. So join us on December 20th. Let's see, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time for our live stream talking about the 8-year, what's going on. Let's hear. It'll be interesting, King Simon, to juxtapose your thoughts. I mean, you go deep, and I know Amy will have her thing. Everybody has their approach, but it'll be very interesting to see how she sort of juxtapose those two ideas. So anyway, let me just finish. Join us. We'll have a link so you can join us. And go ahead, King Simon.
Look at the name Amy. 114471. Okay, great. That's 5. That's 6. So she should come from a healing perspective. 11. That's 12. She should come from a more excited and expressive way. That's a beautiful way to come at whatever she's going to say. That's the gift. That's the gift that she has, because the name reveals the gift, talents, expressions, and also the urge and the outer and inner who you are. Your name reveals that. So, I mean, I can, I have fun with names.
I think that's a great segue. You know what we're going to talk about on Patreon? Here's the deal. We're going to talk about the association with names and numbers. What does your name mean? Oh, we've heard about formulas before, but I have a feeling King Simon will have some amazing things to say when it comes to that. So join us over on Patreon.
Right.
Before we sign off on the main channel, tell us where we can find you, and we're going to figure out how to get that book list. But in the meantime, what if there were one book by you, because I know you've written several, that you would recommend to our viewers, which one would it be?
Definitely my last book, because every book has taken me to different levels.
Hold that up so we can see it.
I'm constantly learning. And in back of all my books, there's a bibliography or recommended reading, recommended videos, recommended websites in back of all my books. But this particular one, my last book, although it's not least, I got 6 more to write. This book here, a numerovational guide for recognizing mental instability and staying motivated. Everybody needs to stay motivated. Numerovation for mental stability. That's the name of the book on Amazon, or they can go
we can get it on Amazon. Okay.
Yeah, or they go to my link tree / King Simon, the Numerovator.
I love it. I love it. This couldn't be a better way to end the year. King Simon, what a heck of a pleasure it's been having you on. Will you come back and see us again?
Oh, yeah. Let's come back and have some fun, man.
Because this has just been fun. High energy, lots of study, and I just so admire your diligence, your passion.
Thank you.
You're necessary, man. So we appreciate you.
I'm just a reflection of you, my sister. Let's do it.
Ditto. Guys, thank you so much. We're going to go on over to Patreon because we got to keep this conversation going. Come on over, support us there. And we're going to go deep on names. All right, journeyers. We'll talk to you real soon. We love you. Mwah. See you next week for the live stream with Amy. Amy, A-M-Y, Amy.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to watch what's next, plus more to explore. And don't forget to subscribe to Higher Journeys.